This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
Good morning. First off, I want to say a really big thank you to Andrew for inviting me to preach today. I'm new in town. My spouse Matt and I just moved here from Washington, D.C., and these acts of hospitality mean a lot to a newcomer. So I'm grateful to be here and with all of you. When I was living in Washington, D.C. for the last 18 years, and before that, I'm a seventh-generation native Californian, so it's good to be back home. But when I was living in Washington, for the last while, most of the work I was doing was as an interim rector, helping parishes in transition to figure out who they were and who they wanted to call as a new rector and how to welcome that new rector in a way that would create a healthy relationship for all of them. And as an interim rector, one of the first things that I did whenever I came into a new congregation, obviously, was to ask a lot of questions. It's part of the job. You know, basic questions like, where are the circuit breakers, and what's all this junk in these closets, and can we get rid of it? And where's a good place to eat lunch around here? But then on to the more serious questions, the questions about who are you? What do you value? What are your hopes and aspirations? What are your fears about the future? What are you struggling with? And I'm actually often reminded of this passage from Matthew's Gospel when I'm doing that kind of work. Because those questions, in a way, are similar to Jesus' questions. Jesus asks his disciples, who does everybody else say that I am? And who do you say that I am? So in a congregation, I usually start the other way. I say, so who do you say you are? And I usually get pretty much the same kinds of answers. Well, we're a welcoming congregation. We are friendly, loving, close-knit community. We are hard at work, doing good works in our community and in the world with our money and with our time. And we're anxious about the future. We're anxious about what we could possibly do to get more young people into our congregation, more young families, how we can minister to young adults, and how also we can minister to the aging part of our congregation, which is a large part of most of our congregations these days. And then we continue the conversation over time as I get to know them, when we get to the much harder question, which is, so what does the world around you say? Who does the world say you are? And usually the answer is quite a bit different from what the congregation says about themselves. As we explore that question, we often discover that congregations are not as hospitable as they think they are. Not out of malice, not out of wanting to keep people away, but just out of not understanding how some of the things that they do are not welcoming. The bulletins may be confusing. A lot of people who didn't grow up in church have no idea how to read a hymnal. They want to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to teach them 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. And we don't teach that. And so people are mystified until they catch on. Our welcome at the door may not extend to welcome in the pew of helping somebody who looks lost. And our welcome outside the door is often non-existent. We're good with people once they find us, but we're not good at helping people to find us. So the difficulty of the disjunction between who we think we are and who other people think we are is a really good place to start the kind of introspection that congregations do during a transition period. Now, I'm not here as your interim pastor. I'm new in town, and I don't know whether you have any of those issues that I described. I'd be surprised if you don't have some of them, because I've been in a lot of congregations now. But I'm not here to accuse you. But I am here to invite you to think about that question. Think about the question of who we say we are and who the people outside this community say we are. But I also want to think a little bit about Jesus' actual questions in the gospel today, because I think right now they are really, really important. Who do other people say that I am, and who do you say that I am? And that's really important because there's a lot of people out in the world right now who are saying who Jesus is. There are, Joel Osteen and the prosperity gospel people are saying Jesus is the person who, if you have enough faith and if you give enough money to the preacher, will make you rich. There are evangelicals and charismatics who are saying that Jesus is the person who will bring bad things to the people who are different or believe differently than I do. There was an article just this week in Time magazine by Brian McLaren, who was a conservative evangelical who has over time evolved to somebody who has a much broader view of what the church is and should be. He was writing about his reflection on his experience of being in Charlottesville for the marches there, and the not just the animosity, but the religious fervor that he saw in the faces of the alt-right marchers. And his article, which is called now I'm going to blank out on the title. Huh? Alt-right. The alt-right has created alt-Christianity. It's the title of the article. In the article, he quotes a man whose name is Christian Piccolini, who's a former alt-right guy who's now working to try to change the message, who says that the appeal, the reason that so many young people, and especially young men, are being recruited into this movement is not ideology. He says, ideology is the excuse for violence, but the reason that people are coming to this movement is a search for three very, very fundamental and important human values. They are searching for identity and community and a sense of purpose. And McLaren reflects on that a little bit, and he concludes that that's supposed to be our job. And since we're not doing it, there's a vacuum. And so there's lots of room for people to jump in with a different message and offer identity, community, and a sense of purpose in ways that are really destructive. So the question for us in our place where we already have identity and community and a sense of purpose is, why is it that we are so bad at getting that message of that invitation to the rest of the world? What is it that we need to do? And obviously we can't keep on doing the same things we've been doing because they are not working. That's manifestly true. Those young people who are joining these movements are not joining our churches. So we need to ask ourselves, in response to the question, what do other people say Jesus is? Who do we say Jesus is? And how do we say it? And where do we say it? Okay? I'm not going to make you raise your hands and answer that question right now, but think about it. When was the last time outside of this community that you had a conversation with somebody about who Jesus is? About what a difference knowing Jesus has made in your life? About what your perception of yourself in relationship to God and relationship to other people has been informed by the life and the teachings and the witness of Jesus. We Episcopalians are not very good at that. We tend to cringe when we hear the word evangelism. And obviously, the models of evangelism that we see in the world from our more conservative brothers and sisters don't work for us. You know, it's not in our Constitution to walk up to somebody and say, have you heard the word of the Lord today? Go knocking door to door. But if we're not going to do that, we have to figure out something else to do. We have to figure out a way to, when we're doing that good work in the world that we're doing, make it more visible. And then when people ask us, why are you doing this? Why are you so generous? We can tell them, it's because Jesus taught me. It's because the example of Jesus as lived out in my community compels me to try to transform the world. It's because I can't do anything else because of the love that I have received from Jesus, from God, from this community. So I invite you to think about that. How can you tell your story? How can you tell who Jesus is in your experience to the world? Amen.